how and when did you get started in cartooning?
It was sort of by default, really, because I started off wanting to be a writer, although I in fact studied biology at university. So I dropped out and pretended to be a writer in the countryside in Derbyshire. Didn't really get anywhere. So I was casting about things to do, and I've always liked drawing. I always liked cartoons. So I started doing that and sending them off, and I started to get them published bit by bit. And then I moved down to London again, which is where I was at university, and started to take them around, show them to people, art editors. And then, much to my delight, I started to become published. And within a few years, I went freelance.
I became a cartoonist because somebody asked me to be, honestly. It wasn't it wasn't something I intended to do, actually. I was an illustrator first. And then I guess ended up becoming a political cartoonist because the Charlie Hebdo attack happened, and I just drew something in response to it, like for me, for no reason really. I was just sad, and then posted it online, and it got shared a bit, and off the back of that, got offered a chance to do some test cartoons for a syndicate, Universal UClick in America, to do like 3 test political cartoons for them, and if they liked them, they'd sign me. They liked them, they signed me. That's what happened, basically.
Why did I get into being a cartoonist? I think I just drew funny, really. I don't, it wasn't a deliberate thing. Everything I did seemed to be, when I was at art college, they said I was too frivolous to do fine art and too messy to do graphics. So,
actually, in my first year studying English literature, and I was walking down the high street. I went into a newsagent, opened a copy of Private Eye, and there was one of my cartoons, because I was doing cartoons for student mags, and one of my friends suggested, why don't you try National magazine? No one got back to me, not even Private Eye, and that is why it was such a surprise.
I guess. But after that, I went back to doing illustration mostly for a couple of years because I got hired in-house at BuzzFeed to be an illustrator there. And when I was there, I wasn't doing political cartooning as such for the most part because I was not allowed to have political opinions publicly. But towards the end, they shifted their policy on that. I started doing some again for them. And then when I left there, it's just became part of like the regular freelance work that I would do. So now I regularly will do cartoons for was doing New Statesman for a while, do The Guardian sometimes, but it's just all sort of, it's all one thing. The illustration, the cartooning, animation, everything is.
Yeah. My older brother worked for the BBC in the warehouse, and every Friday he brought home the Radio Times. So at the age of 11, my goal was to be in there, with Ronald Searle and Ralph Steadman and Joel Scarfe, anyone whose name began with S. And so that was my dream, really, as a little boy.
I told my parents I really wanted to be a cartoonist, and they were about as supportive as you could be for such a bizarre wish in a child. I told my careers advisor at school I wanted to be a cartoonist, and he talked me out of it. This must be around 14, I suppose. He said there are very few professional cartoonists in the country, so I think that's a little ambitious. So yeah, I believed the bugger as well. I didn't actually get into cartooning until much later. I did proper jobs for years.
The curtains behind me are my mother's design. My father, although he was a submariner, was also a sculptor. And we had artists around the house the whole time. And there was lots of parties with artists in them. I was looked after by Bridget Riley when I was a child. I met Salvador Dali when I was very small. So there were pencils and pens and paints everywhere, constantly. But also, I didn't really like the whole artist vibe because I met all these dusty old tweedy people who would sit on my swing crying or flouncing about in feather boas because it was the sort of 70s. And I liked the idea of cartooning because also it's much more instant. It doesn't take very long. I'm a lazy person naturally, so it worked out well for me.
I've never had a proper job. I went to art college. And I was still doodling, and as I was in school, doodling fellow students and lecturers and things. Nothing nothing particularly commercial, but just for my own entertainment and the entertainment of my fellow students.
I was working in commercial art studios then, and I started sending cartoons to all the papers and getting rejection slips back, which I could have papered the room with. Eventually, somebody bought one. I couldn't believe it. This was the Weekend Mail, which is long gone now. But that was my first cartoon sale.
And when I did leave college, it was a graphic design course at Trent Polytechnic, and they usually had good connections with studios, graphic design studios in the area. And I was actually farmed out to one in Leicestershire, so it was a fair way away. They sort of specialised in Disney products and also greeting cards, and also the sort of illustrations that appear on like Airfix models of warplanes and tanks. And I was asked to work on that, and I soon found out my my strengths and weaknesses, and it wasn't for me, that sort of work.
I was always drawing and constantly drawing cartoons, and then I sent one into Punch when I was 15, and they published it and invited me to their Christmas party. They sent me £50, so I went straight to the local armoury and bought an air rifle. And then they invited me to their Christmas party, where I met lots of dusty old men and got really quite drunk with them because it was the 70s.
How I got started in cartooning, it's sort of by accident. I didn't really mean to be a cartoonist. I just started drawing not very long ago, about 5 years ago. And as I was sort of relearning to draw, then I started putting stupid captions on the pictures I was drawing. And then later on, someone pointed out that what I was doing was cartoons. So it was entirely by accident.
From since I remember, I've loved drawing. And I used to lie on our sitting room floor drawing reams and reams of sheets of cowboys and footballers. And I imagine myself playing for the football team. I could draw a crowd of 150,000 people, me scoring the winning goal in the World Cup final and all that kind of stuff. Maybe something to do with being an only child, I don't know. I mean, I did have friends, but I think being an only child lends itself to creating your own world. So it was drawing rather than before I knew what cartooning really was.
There was never really a conscious, I suppose there was a conscious decision to start sending stuff off, which I came to in about 97, I think. But yeah, it was something that was always there in the back of my mind, always, when I was at school, I did stuff for the school magazine. When I was at college, I did stuff for the college magazine. So it's kind of always been there, brewing away, and then eventually decided to try and do it professionally, I suppose.
I started out in the old days when you did everything by post. So you'd kind of go to W.H. Smith's and see what kind of magazines took cartoons. The really obvious ones like Punch and Private Eye, obviously. And then I'd draw my cartoons up, send them by post to people with a stamped addressed envelope, of course. And then you get a lot of rejections, as ever. And then eventually someone takes something. I think I sold some cartoons to She magazine, and that might have been my first sale.
And there were cartoons everywhere. It was a really good time to get started. Well, I was very lucky, I guess, to be alive when I was and to be working when I was.
And I went back to mum and dad and told them that I put all my, well, not eggs, it was one egg in one basket. And I said, I'm going to be a cartoonist.
And then I think the Evening Standard, because they used to take cartoons, it was quite good. They used to take a lot of gag cartoons. This would be in the late 70s. I thought it was a long time at the time, to be well over a year to sell anything at all. And then I started to get into it a bit. The Punch started taking, Private Eye, and then people see your work, they come to you, and then you get commissions. And then, I got the FT gig because someone saw a cartoon of mine in Punch.
And then at school, I was drawing there. And I did start to do cartoons at school because I drew cartoons of teachers, as a lot of people do. And that was an interesting lesson because the teachers who objected were the ones who hadn't been drawn, either because their faces weren't distinctive enough or whatever. And I thought, my God, people love being recognised. The head teacher with the jutty out chin, and in those days it was a mortarboard, and they were just gifts.
During my 20s, I sold a few cartoons to the local Newbury newspaper, but that didn't really count because it was just a local thing. And it wasn't until I was approaching 40 and found myself working in a mental health job that I wasn't hugely enjoying that I decided I wanted to get away from it all, start all over again, and go to art college. So I did. I studied graphic design and illustration around about the 40-year-old mark. And while I was there, I decided I wanted to revisit my first love and start sending out cartoons to magazines. I had plenty of time on my hands because I was an art student, and you don't do a lot. And I think it was my second or third attempt. I flogged something to Private Eye, and I was amazed. That was all you had to do, was to put some drawings into an envelope and post them off with a return envelope, and they would use some. It was a revelation.
My dad used to take me to have my hair cut in this barber's, and they used to have old Giles annuals and Punch, and I used to flick through them. It just seemed to make sense, and I just started, you can draw before you can write, obviously. So I could draw little stories and stuff.
I was at Leeds University doing a fine art course, which was painting and art history. And after a while, I realised the paintings I was doing were a little bit pretentious, perhaps. And I was, at the same time, I was drawing for the Leeds Student magazine. It was all studenty things, and there was music and anti-apartheid movement and all that stuff. So there was lots of material there. So I enjoyed doing that. Steve Bell and I were there at the same time, both doing the fine art in the fine art department. And he was drawing too, and he went a bit towards more towards film. So it's funny, we were both there at the same time, and we must have picked up on stuff with each other.
I sent some stuff to Punch. I was struggling for a style in those days, as you might be aware, seeing some of my earlier work. But I'd sent in a lot of mixtures of different styles. I got the letter here, actually. I got from Punch. If you can see it, it's dated the 28th of September 1976. It goes on to say, "Dear Mr. Dredge, some nice stuff here. You have the right flavour of humour for us and an attractive style of drawing." So that was a good start. Or rather, one of your styles is attractive. Your more self-conscious comical style is the wrong one, I feel. Don't overdo the distortions on the mouths. And then it goes on. Anyway, I am keeping 3 of these. My jaw hit the bottom of the bedroom floor. I hope you'll be encouraged to send us more from time to time. Yours sincerely, Bill Ewison. Thanks, Bill. I did send some stuff from time to time, and the rest, as they say, is, history, I suppose.